And Tim Horgan, you're not muted. If you could mute yourself, that would be good. Thank you. Okay. Okay, good evening. On behalf of the House Progressive Caucus, I would like to welcome you to a forum focused on the Democratic candidates for State Senate in Senate District 21. I am Representative Wendy Thomas, Progressive Caucus member and member of the Resource, Recreation, and Development Committee. Tonight, we are joined by candidates Deaglan MacEachern and Rebecca Perkins Kwoka, both running for New Hampshire State Senate. We plan to be together for about an hour. I will be asking each candidate some questions, and each candidate will have up to 90 seconds to respond. We will alternate between which candidate speaks first. Representative Rogers will signal to each candidate as they approach the end of the time. Except for the moderator and the candidates, everyone else will be muted. If anyone in the audience has a question, please enter the question in the chat, and I will try to get to as many of those questions as possible. This forum will be recorded. So let's start with an opening statement from each of the candidates. We'll start with Deaglan.
Thank you, Wendy, and thank you, New Hampshire House Progressive Caucus. It is great to be here. This has been an unusual campaign, certainly from COVID, and it's been a tough one in that we lost my dad, I guess about a week ago. He instilled in me the power of government because he saw firsthand that being one of 8 kids living in poverty, it was government that helped him get out of it. But even as my father taught me those lessons and showed me that government can be a force for good, I've seen it fail so many people, including my family. When my wife was diagnosed with lupus, I was fighting health insurance companies as she fought for her life. I will never forget being called away to deal with a billing department question that we had maxed out a credit card on an out-of-pocket deductible while she was laying there fighting for her life. In Concord, we need to continue to work to bring low-cost prescription drugs to New Hampshire and to fight to expand access. We need to recognize the opioid crisis as a health crisis, not an enforcement crisis. We must always fight to defend the woman's rights to the full range of reproductive services, including safe, legal abortion. And we can't forget we have a governor that voted to defund it. My grandfather only graduated the 3rd grade, but his children attended college because of public education. We need someone in Concord that knows what Republicans are going to try to do to education funding. That's going to be especially true next year. And we need someone who fights for the environment and understands the stakes of acting quickly on emerging carcinogens like PFAS. And I'm proud to have been against the Granite Bridge pipeline in 2018 and for refusing fossil fuel lobbyist money now. All my life, I've seen that investing in our environment, education, and the future is what we need to do in New Hampshire. And I'm looking forward to the questions tonight.
Thank you. Rebecca?
Yeah, thank you very much. And thank you to all of you for being here today. I know you've organized a lot of these forums, and so thanks for participating in our system and taking the time to do that. So I'm thrilled to be here with you today. You know, I'm running for State Senate because I think in these unprecedented times, we need a leader who understands the urgency of the issues facing many of our residents of District 21 and who will be solutions focused in fighting for real change. I think that I've shown leadership on some of the key issues that are facing our state, and I would love to continue to work hard on behalf of the residents of District 21 to move the state forward. I come from a working class family. You know, when I was younger, my family owned a Dairy Queen in Exeter, and when I was first born, my family actually lived in a 1-room apartment above that Dairy Queen. My first crib was in the office of my dad's, or in the closet of my dad's office. So by the time I was 9 or 10, I was washing bottles at the sink. By the time I was in high school, I was working 30 hours a week to help my single mom keep everything afloat after long days at Phillips Exeter on scholarship. I feel like I've been given a lot of opportunity in my life, and I want to make sure that I'm turning around to give that opportunity back to other people and continuing to make New Hampshire a more equal place for everyone. Some of the issues that I've worked on that I'd love to talk to you about tonight are housing, small business recovery, and renewable energy. And I'd love to also talk to you about expanding access to healthcare and voting, how education is a path forward, and always increasing equity. My wife and I live in Portsmouth with our baby girl.
Excellent, thank you. Okay, the next question. Given the economy, how do you think we will be able to balance a budget next year? Will you be increasing city-town portions of education and other services? Rebecca, we'll start with you.
Sure. Thank you for the question. I think this is going to be one of the most important issues facing us as we go into next year, is how we can make sure that our budget protects our priorities while also allowing us all to reopen schools and have parents return to work safely, making sure that we're accounting for both the safety of our educators and our students. I think it will be incredibly important next year to understand exactly what we're asking of schools, which is a huge logistical challenge, not only to change transportation, but to change classroom setups. In some cases, to make sure we have safe HVAC, to have PPE, and other changes. And so making sure that we're not only protecting our school funding, but providing additional funding, hopefully in partnership with our federal delegation, will be something that I will work hard for in Concord.
Okay, Deaglan, same question.
Thanks. I'm not the type of Democrat that's going to take the pledge. I think that we could look at a capital gains tax. We also have the ability to sell and tax cannabis. And if the statewide education property tax is on the books, then we need to be talking about increasing senior tax credits and disabled tax credits, so that's more fair. That's something that we can expand on, and I'm happy that we expanded on that at the Portsmouth City Council. But I'm also really proud of what the legislature did this session and not roll back the business profits and enterprise tax. There was a provision in there that if they didn't meet funds for a reason, and so that's going to be a little bit better going into next year. And I don't think that corporations that are making profits such as they are should be able to have that lowered. So I'm proud of that, and I'm going to be working to fight, especially in terms of education. I'm proud to have the support of NE in New Hampshire because they believe that I'm going to be that champion. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, next question is, where do you stand on gun violence prevention and why? What would you do to implement your plan? And Deaglan, we'll start with you on this one.
Yeah, so this is something that I haven't really figured out how I'm going to tell my daughter when she starts kindergarten in another year, when she comes home from school and says that the teacher and they will do a good job of making sure that she is not too scared. But when she tells me that she goes through an active shooter drill, a little part of me is going to go away because a part of her innocence is going to go away then too. I think we need to be doing everything within our power, and that includes red flag laws. That includes background checks. I was really disappointed to see the governor, universal background checks, which I think broad support. House Bill 109 vetoed that. I think we need to be talking about the emotion of that. I don't think in this district we can be scared to talk about making sure regulations are on guns in a preventative way to keep people from losing life.
Thank you. Rebecca?
Yeah, thank you for the question. So, I think it's incredibly important that we continue to pursue what I view as very common sense gun reform, which is universal background checks, and making sure that we have red flag laws in place. I also think that we need to consider, the role of concealed carry and look at how that's also even affecting us in the State House. I know I attended some hearings with the legislature last year, and I saw news reports on other times where, the presence of weapons is simply unnecessary and intimidating for participation in government. And so I'm proud to say that I've received the Moms Demand Action Gun Sense Candidate distinction. And, I think that this is something that we need to stand strong on, and that, guns are just not necessary parts of our society writ large.
Thank you. Okay, the next question. What is the state of the broadband problem in your district? And what tools will you provide cities and towns in your district to remedy this? Rebecca, we'll start with you.
Sure. So we happen to be lucky, we have fairly decent broadband access in our district, but that doesn't mean that the problem is solved. I mean, going back to school this year and making sure that we can rely on remote learning means that we're really going to need to make sure that all districts have the same access to broadband, and that children and families have the access that they need to be participating in their education system and their work. I am glad to see that part of what we'll be investing in for the rest of the year is shovel-ready broadband projects. I think that they're well overdue, but I do want to make sure that we're considering how, as a state legislature, we can support broadband as a tool for equity and to make sure that all of our students and our families are receiving the same access.
Thank you. Deaglan?
Well, we might have all better access. It's not ubiquitous in terms of adoption there. And in terms of school and remote learning, I think the funds needed to create Wi-Fi hotspots is important. When it comes to broadband, and this is a state issue, when we're talking about what changes in terms of COVID, one of the big changes that we're going to face is work from home opportunities are going to increase. We're going to see more people move to New Hampshire, and we're going to see more people move to parts of the state that currently do not have as strong broadband access. I fundamentally believe that broadband needs to be a utility. We need to, it just doesn't make sense to run, 3, 4 fiber lines to a house. We need to be able to have it as a utility and then lease those out to companies that want to take on the customer service angle and, marketing and support and all that. But it's an important thing. And if we don't do it right, this is the opportunity that New Hampshire has to really connect more parts of the state to not the jobs of the future. I always say the future is here. It's just not equally distributed. But making sure that work from home opportunities are at every part of the state is critical if we want to make sure that more parts of the state are livable where we have that opportunity. And that's something that I certainly will fight for. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Families moving to New Hampshire are having difficulty finding affordable housing. Where do you stand on affordable housing, and how would you implement your plan, and what goals do you have? Deaglan, we'll start with you.
Sure. So affordable housing it's a big question. It's more than 90 seconds. Top level, people, we need to be investing in workforce housing. I think that the laws on the books right now are not strong enough, and I'd like to see, because we have some parts of our state which are very high medium incomes, I'd like to see those even potentially lowered. We need to be talking about transportation to connect more areas together. In our district, if we could connect Durham even over to another district in Rochester through the Wildcat Transit, that would be a huge opportunity to kind of spread out the wealth a little bit. We have to talk about broadband again to connect more parts of the state. But we have to look at ways that are going to solve this in a uniquely New Hampshire way. Since we have such a crushing property tax, I think things like ADUs, accessory dwelling units, making sure that those are streamlined, and we on a state level could streamline those plans and require municipalities to create plans that are kind of shovel ready. That would help defer some of the property tax costs that people face.
15 seconds.
As well as create some of those homes that allow more people to start off in. I think that's one kind of New Hampshire way to work within the system that's going to lower people's property taxes and increase housing affordability.
Time.
Thank you. Rebecca?
Yeah, thank you for the question. So for those of you who don't know my background, I've been working on the issue of affordable and workforce housing for over a decade now. I started as a law student, and it was the single issue that brought me actually into electoral politics, was running in Portsmouth for city council in order to see zoning changes there. I was elected in January. I asked the mayor for a housing committee in March. By May, that was up and running, and I ran a 2-year comprehensive process to invite a lot of community conversation, including a Portsmouth Listens dialogue, that allowed us to pass comprehensive zoning changes in Portsmouth virtually unopposed within my first 2-year term, which was a huge accomplishment and I'm very proud of. Because of my work on housing, I have been pulled into conversations on the state level on this and was proud to be part of drafting HB 1629 and HB 1632, which were in this year's session, and received some favorable treatment in Ways and Means, passing 20-0. And so I think that there's solutions at the state level, including enabling our cities and towns to require workforce housing, which we're not currently able to do, in creating a housing champions program, which provides, thank you, state level incentives to municipalities to participate and pass housing friendly policies, incentives such as, increased access to the revolving loan fund, which are low interest loans, and extra points on their state capital improvement program requests. Additionally, education provided by OSI for our land use board members so that they can understand the broader implications of each of our municipalities acting alone. And, I do think that there are opportunities on the state level to impact this and to support change at the local level, but it's absolutely a crisis that we need to not only be thinking about the long-term supply on, with a vacancy rate of 0.75% in most of the state, but also the, more urgent issues of eviction and a rise in homelessness that will emerge from this pandemic.
Thank you very much. Excuse me. COVID has hit everyone hard, especially our most vulnerable communities. Healthcare was problematic to begin with. What is your position about providing healthcare to the most vulnerable in New Hampshire? Rebecca?
Sure. My position on providing healthcare to the most vulnerable is that it's absolutely a right that we should be working towards from a policy perspective, and making sure that everyone has access to preventive care, and that in times like these, we have humane policies that recognize that, for us to be treated and recover and get better it's better for everyone as a whole. And so, of course, I support the hard work you guys have done on Medicaid expansion, and I hope that we can continue to see that expansion. I hope that we can continue to fight discrimination in our healthcare laws. I know that, my wife and I, in order to have our daughter, had to go through in vitro fertilization, and we experienced some coverage insurance that was not the same as if we had been a heterosexual couple. And so I think being aware of, those ways that we still need education and protection in our healthcare system is important. And finally, I think that making sure that on a federal level, we continue to look at how we can support robust marketplaces for health insurance so that we can de-link healthcare from employment will continue to provide increased access to people. You might be on mute, Wendy.
Oh,
I'm sorry, Deaglan.
I'll jump in. First of all, I guess, in terms of framing, my view on this, I do believe that we need a single payer system in this country on the New Hampshire level, because that's the healthcare costs, and to decouple work. It's not a no-brainer, but it makes a lot of sense for us to be able to do that. When it comes to healthcare, expanding access to Medicaid, Medicaid reimbursement, those are things that I will fight for. Simpler things that should have been signed into law, just like HB 685, which would have included any abortion care in terms of any maternity benefits. That needs to happen. It needs to be protected there. I know just how hard it is to fight insurance companies, and more than anything else, you just have it shouldn't rely on being an advocate and with the resources to fight an insurance company in order to get care in New Hampshire. That's my fundamental belief. It's something that we need to protect. When it comes specifically to COVID and budget, cuts that would be proposed, we need to understand that we've made a lot of gains, especially when it comes to mental health and the opioid response. I'm happy to be able to serve on the board of SOS, and we need to be able to make sure that we don't lose those gains next year.
Thank you. Voter suppression attempts are going to be a big issue in the next election. What is your position on voter suppression, and how would you implement changes? Deaglan.
Well, we're lucky enough to have Representative Smith here, who had a perfect bill when it came to independent redistricting. I think that voters should get to pick their politicians. It shouldn't be the other way around. And when that was killed by the governor, I think he sent a message that he's going to do whatever is power to maintain power. Now, I would hope that we can, it's going to be a tough fight to be able to get that up back on the agenda, the commission, independent redistricting commission, to be able to meet as quickly as it would need to be stood up, and then have the maps drawn by 2021 so that people can do that. But that would be something that I would commit to trying to push for that, because I think fundamentally when people feel as though their vote counts because they're not gerrymandered into a district, either if it's a Republican or Democratic district, people vote more. And so I think having the fairness when it comes to redistricting is, if I'm only given 90 seconds to answer, that's something that I'm going to continue to champion in the next session.
Thank you. Rebecca?
Yeah, thank you for the question. And, my position on voter suppression is that should never, ever make anyone feel like they're doing something wrong, for participating in our democracy, and that we want to welcome everyone to vote and make that absolutely as easy as possible. And so I, of course, agree that independent redistricting is a big part of making sure that our state's electoral system is very fair, something that we absolutely need to fight for as a core value. I also support a lot of other ways that we can increase access to voting, including making sure that we have no excuse absentee voting, that we could allow early voting, and eventually, when software on a national level catches up with it, potentially move to an online voter system. But I don't think that that's, a near-term expansion. So I think that in terms of college students, participating in our system, that they should, be able to know what their intent is in terms of residency, and to be welcomed to vote with us, and to make sure that, if possible, that we can gradually move towards supporting our individual towns and cities to expand hours at their polling stations, just to make sure that working families, have full access, as it's often hard to vote, between the hours of 8 and 7 p.m. So hopefully to expand it greatly.
Thank you. There is currently an awful lot of money involved in political campaigns. What is your position on campaign financing, and how would you implement protections? Rebecca?
Sure. So I do think that there is money involved in politics, and that, transparency and disclosure are always the best policies to make sure that we're fully understanding, where a candidate is coming from, and just to understand their positions on everything. So I'm proud to say that in our campaign, over 78% of our donations are from donors of $100 or less. And, I think that it's important to see grassroots support, and to make sure that you have a large base of donors in your campaigns, to make sure that that it's a community process, and that's helping to elect people that the community wants. I think in terms of reforms, New Hampshire does a good job. Obviously, we are a focus of national attention every year, but we certainly could use some clarifications in terms of our definitions under our campaign finance law. I think it would be important to clarify, when donations can be received, and make sure that we are, fully transitioning to the online system, which we have. In general, just make sure that we're supporting transparency, and ultimately that the requirements are crystal clear for everyone.
Thank you. Thank you. Deaglan?
Yeah, raising money means that I got to ask people for money, and I don't love doing that. We should close the LLC loophole. That's a pretty easy one. We should enact. I think that campaigns should be publicly financed It's something that I've believed for a long time. I know that Citizens United has made that a little bit more difficult. But I think that campaign, more than the influence that it has, it's the time that consumes campaigns to raise money to get a message out. And I think that's fundamentally incongruous with what the job of a senator should be, and that's to listen to constituents and to understand what their needs are, and not to have to debate whether or not you're going to spend time, raising money or actually, listening to voters. And so any move towards publicly funding elections is something that I would support here in New Hampshire level.
Thank you. Climate change is one of our most critical issues that we're going to need to address in the next few years. On the topic of climate change, what will you do to pursue a carbon neutral New Hampshire, and what year is your target date? Deaglan.
Yeah, I guess we can start with me. My target date, where I'd want it tomorrow, where it's going to happen probably sometimes between tomorrow and 2050. I think it's the job of this district to really kind of stand out and make bold goals and claims around that. I was proud to be against the Granite Bridge pipeline in 2018 when I learned about it in a House meeting in Epping. It didn't make sense to spend $410 million creating a pathway for natural gas to flow out to eventually what I think the sea. We should be focusing on, especially in our district, we have the Gulf of Maine, which is all, apart from being in a huge energy source for wind and being able to pull that wind either through Seabrook or CV Island and hook up with our grid and potentially do that with neighboring states. The Gulf of Maine is actually experiencing climate change more than most other bodies of water on our planet Earth. So not only does it have the potential to be a part of the solution, green jobs and the future when it comes to that, it's also most directly impacted by climate change. So wind energy, I think, from this district needs to be a high priority, along with net metering and a decentralized power grid. Thank you.
Thank you. Rebecca?
Yeah, thank you for the question. And, I agree this district is particularly hard hit by climate change, particularly when it comes to sea level rise. And so it's an important issue for our district and an urgent one that, we need leadership on, especially from people who are very informed about how, we can bring renewables to the grid. I am general counsel of a small solar company, and so I've worked in renewables for over 5 years now. It's a complicated field, but I think there are solutions out there that we can move forward on the state level. I point to the program recently implemented by the state of Maine where, they signed legislation into law in July. By November, they had seen over 50 companies move into the state, over 450 megawatts of projects proposed, and those projects will create over 15,000 new jobs in the next 2 to 3 years in the state of Maine. We can do something similar here in New Hampshire where there's a political will, and I think we need to fight for that, not only on solar, but on wind. As Deaglan mentioned, I think that we can see transformation here, and it's necessary that we transition to a green energy supply for our power because currently, our energy supply has become restricted, and high energy spikes and prices, disproportionately affect our low-income communities. And so we need to provide that stability. We need to have vision for the future. We need to have bold policy on this, and diversifying our energy supply is an incredibly important piece of that. In terms of goal, I agree with Deaglan. Hopefully it's tomorrow, but I hope by 2030 we can see significant progress on this, and then as soon after that, a complete transformation as possible.
Thank you. And along those lines, Granite Bridge pipeline was recently stopped to the relief of many New Hampshire residents. Do you support dependence on fracking? Which green method seems most feasible, and how will you implement them? Rebecca, we'll start with you.
Sure. So my campaign has been on the record, and I am on the record as opposing the Granite Bridge pipeline. As a practitioner in renewables, what we need is investment in distributed generation and making sure that we're creating energy stability and sustainability and resiliency for ourselves as a state. And that requires, again, vision and investment in our renewable sources. Fracking has proved to be a disastrous development environmentally across the country, and I have also followed that issue for most of my career, including the early days in Pennsylvania, where there was very little regulation. Landowners were essentially being isolated and their land leased for very low rates. And so I think in general, supporting infrastructure that encourages that practice is bad for our earth. I know there have been earthquakes and other terrible things that have happened in addition. As far as which green measures are most realistic, in the near term, I would like to see us change the net metering cap to allow for economies of scale in our solar production. I think that, like I said, in Maine has seen this transformation and we can do that. Offshore wind off the Gulf of Maine does represent an opportunity, and particularly in our district, I think Pease and the port represent an additional opportunity because a lot of the equipment for wind is large and needs to be shipped from other places. We're going to need tugboats to anchor our floating turbines in the Gulf of Maine. We're going to need help making sure the power cables can come from the Gulf onshore. Hopefully we can locate a substation near our district or at Schiller Station that can do that. And I think lastly that, Pease can be a place that can support the development of that supply chain. So I think that we have a future in all of these things, and we can fight for them in Concord. Thank you.
Deaglan?
So first off, we can't have a governor that's in the pocket of Eversource. That can't happen. I am proud to have been against the Granite Bridge pipeline from the outset. It didn't make sense. And frack gas, what has happened with frack gas in the United States is that it's turned all of what were previously import facilities into export facilities. So all of the gas and all of the infrastructure, and I think that the Granite Bridge was representative of that. It was going to be taking that gas eventually and moving it out to sea where a higher dollar could be received. Now I am happy. I'm still a monthly contributor to 350 NH. Because of the support and the fight that they took to that pipeline project. I cannot believe that Liberty Utilities believes that there's a opportunity to fit us with a $9 million bill for the research and marketing around that to put it onto ratepayers. That seems just unbelievable to me. So we have to stand up, and because when you stand up against things like that and you demand that the infrastructure changes don't happen tomorrow, but they happen today, they look under the rug and they found, some Concord pipeline that was going to be able to do the same thing without having to invest $410 million of ratepayer money that would have locked us in to fossil fuels for the next 30 years.
Time.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay. PFAS in our water and land is an ongoing issue in the state of New Hampshire, and especially in your district. How would you address PFAS contamination, and how would you hold polluters accountable? Deaglan, we'll start with you.
Well, it is close to the district. It will be close to every single district, I believe. We had Coakley and Pease and found out about the emerging carcinogens. We had folks like Lindsay Carmichael here and Andrea Amico who are fighting to make sure that we have broader standards on that. I think one of the things that we used to lead now on those parts per million, but other states are passing us. I think Massachusetts and New York are not looking at PFAS on individual concentration standpoints, but looking at it collectively as how much does this add up. What I am committed to is making sure that we have the strongest PFAS requirements in the United States. And two, that as a state, we are recognizing that we made a mistake in the past by not regulating these, and that we need to have state money that's going towards municipalities that are trying to clean this up. There's already, I believe it's a $50 million, it was in the last budget in terms of testing around PFAS that municipalities can use and lend against. That's something that's important to understand that, because we all agree that we would do everything to help a kid if they had cancer. Part of that help is understanding the threat that is posed to the endocrine system with PFAS and PFOS and going out and advocating for that immediately.
Thank you. Rebecca?
Yeah, thanks again for the question. I think PFAS just represents, a threat that's going to be replicated. Unfortunately, there are over 3,000 chemical compounds that fit in the bucket of PFAS or PFOA. And I think, they are just some of the emerging contaminants that we are going to come to understand in the coming years. And so part of what's alarming about that is that we're just learning to test for them, at the accuracy level that we're setting. And so I agree that we absolutely need to be vigilant about these levels. And I'm proud to see that we did lower, the MCLs for 4 of the chemical compounds that are most commonly occurring, and that we did provide state money to support towns and cities on this. I think it's going to be a large scale problem, and making sure that we are, internalizing the costs that corporations have essentially externalized for a long time through, distribution of these chemicals in our landscape it's going to be an issue of our generation. And so I think we're going to be answering the question not only on this batch of chemicals, but on others in the future, and, understanding the science, how it travels through the bedrock, where it is a threat to our drinking water sources, and making sure that at the state level, we are vigilant in not only sourcing funds from corporations, but also, at the federal level to support our towns and cities and prevent, leaving them alone is going to be a huge piece of policymaking going forward.
Thank you. Thank you. All right. So let's assume you get elected. What are some of the first 2 bills that you would submit? Rebecca, we'll start with you.
Yeah, thanks for the question. I think that the budget is going to be priority number 1, and it's going to be a huge undertaking, that we all need to work together on. And so I know during this campaign, I've been trying to speak with as many people as I can, including Chris Dwyer here, who's been on the Education Funding Commission, Patty Lovejoy, who's of course been critical in the state budget in the House, and others, just to understand, what is the current status and where can we, potentially pick up some additional sources of revenue. I think there are some ideas out there, and so trying to be a part of the solution on those will be important, including how to create more equal education funding and making sure that we're protecting that. In addition, I'd love to pick back up, the housing bills that I've worked on and make sure that those can continue through the session. Obviously, this was a strange year for everyone involved. And so, those seem to be widely supported, and making sure that we can support our towns and cities and passing housing friendly policies again will be urgent. We are already seeing an uptick in evictions. We're seeing an uptick in homelessness. And so making sure that we're fighting for those. And then, lastly, I do think that our energy sources are a critical thing in the state. Every winter, we see low-income families, affected by spikes in our energy prices, and those also affect small businesses as employers. And so making sure that we're, being proactive in supporting our families and our working families especially is one of my top priorities.
Thank you. Deaglan?
Well, the governor has vetoed 79 bills. So I would just pick up 2 of them. One, we need to be talking about paid family leave. It's just, it was really tough the last 2 months of my dad, and especially the last 2 weeks. But I could be there for him in those last days because I had a flexible work schedule. I can't imagine what I would have gone through, what my family would have gone through if that hadn't been the case. And COVID has just made that even, a bigger, brighter line. Second, minimum wage. We need to have a minimum wage in New Hampshire. We don't have a minimum wage in New Hampshire. We don't actually have a minimum wage. We default to the federal minimum wage. And so it's not that Massachusetts minimum wage is higher than us. We don't have a minimum wage in the state. We need a minimum wage. I support a $15 minimum wage. I know that it was a bill that was compromised to get more support, but it just shows you when you try to put a deal in front of this governor that has the support of business, that has a phase in, you end up
8 seconds.
finding out that this governor is not trying to govern. He's just setting up a political future. And so those are two major things that we need in this COVID crisis.
Thank you. We currently have a therapeutic cannabis program in New Hampshire. What are your views on legalizing recreational cannabis, and how do you think it could affect the financial bottom line in New Hampshire? Deaglan?
Well, I'm 100% in support of legalizing recreational cannabis. I have some doubts that it's going to solve all of our woes when it comes to funding. The lottery certainly doesn't when it comes to education funding, but it's money, and I'm not going to give up that dough. But I come at this from a slightly different standpoint. Now, you don't have to wait for the science on this. Massachusetts, Maine, Vermont, even an entire country above us have done this. But I talked to a man who lost his son to opioids, and he was convinced that if his son didn't buy pot from the same guy that sold him heroin, he would be with us today. And the data supports that heroin overdoses drop in states that legalize marijuana. I think it's it's certainly the right thing to do from a business standpoint and a money standpoint. I think it's the right when it comes to the science, but I think it's a moral obligation that we have as well. We believe we're the live free or die state, and yet we're not leading on that, and it's time to. That's not something that I think that can wait any longer.
Thank you. Rebecca?
Thank you very much. So I have a similar view, which is, that I think we should legalize and make sure that we're taxing, cannabis. I think that there's a pathway here, and I think it's important that we lead on it and we make sure that there's progress on the issue, but that we also couple that with education. I think some stakeholders still need education around the science, which I believe says that, marijuana is not a gateway drug to the opioid crisis, but we need to make sure that we're building a coalition that fully understands that and that we're moving that forward together. I also don't want to overstate the revenues from that, but I do think it can be an important piece of our budget if we move forward on it. We've seen that in other states. I also think an important part of this question is that, having marijuana not be legalized basically results in disproportionate incarceration of our communities of color. And so making sure that we're doing everything we can to move racial justice and equity forward includes making sure that we're removing these minor offenses from people's records and from their lives, and that we're reducing incarceration time in general, because every member of our society should be allowed to thrive as well as they can, and making sure that our systems is a big part of that.
Thank you. And Rebecca, you just mentioned the opioid crisis, which is a big problem in New Hampshire. What steps do you think could be taken to curtail it? And we'll start with you, Rebecca.
Yeah, thank you. So I think we've seen a few bottlenecks in our state, and many of them are around immediate intervention, but I think there are some other systemic things that we can do to address this. So one has been, designated service facility beds. We've really seen that when people are ready for an intervention, there is not always a bed available for them to receive that treatment. And so we all know that, when someone is ready for an intervention, that's an important time in this fight. And so we need to make sure that we're fully supporting making sure that we don't have anyone on our waiting list, when it comes to the opioid crisis for beds. Medicaid reimbursement and making sure that we have higher rates is a big piece of this. And I think that will help us see more facilities in the long term come online and make sure that, again, we're sort of providing that comprehensive service support, and then making sure that we have reimbursement parity, which I think has been a priority for services that are provided, related to treatment and recovery around the opioid crisis are very important. Most importantly of all is that we recognize that this is a disease that should be treated with compassion, and that we make sure that all of our policies, including law enforcement, recognize that more enforcement does not solve this problem, but more compassion does, and that getting people help for the root causes of these problems will be much more effective than treating the symptoms.
Thank you. Thank you. Deaglan?
Yeah, this is something that I spent a lot of time on SOS, and it's something that really moves me. How many people are doing this really outside of the state of Concord, outside of our capital, that are mobilizing on this. SOS is one organization. It's one that I know well, but that organization depends quite literally on the ability for one man, John Burns, to write grants. I think we need to adequately fund the recovery programs that we have and give some prediction to those funding sources. I do not think that this is an enforcement issue. This is something that is a health disease just like anything else. Not only around the treatment, but around the stigma when it comes to addiction. We need to take that out of the shadows. We need to create more opportunities for recovery-friendly workplaces. But we have to recognize that, we had
15 seconds.
We had a ton of prescription drugs pushed on America, and in New Hampshire in particular. We need to be able to go and get the funding on a federal level that we can bring back and treat this. This is something that is going to be a big and long and nasty fight that we're going to have to get more funding around, because just because we turn off the spigot doesn't mean that those folks are going to immediately receive the help that they need.
Thank you. Okay, so now we're going to turn to some questions in our chat. The first one is, how would you work to identify systemic racism in our statutes and change it? Deaglan?
Well, I was proud that that here in the City Council, we went through unconscious bias training. I feel like sometimes people go through the unconscious bias training are, maybe in the, not the ones that we need it, but I think being able to understand that and implement that on a state level, I would be, I think the best way that you can do things like this as a legislature is to listen and to be able to have dialogue with persons and people of color that have identified those issues already. I am supportive of the initial establishment of more of an overseeing position from the Commission on Law Enforcement Accountability. I think that is something that we do see a problem in law enforcement, and being able to have an outside body that is statewide, that also provides a due process for police officers, and not this lorry list that creates you might have had somebody on this police force that was involved in a cover-up, but we can't talk about it. That's a step in the right direction. I was disappointed that we weren't talking about qualified immunity there, but I think that's a step in the right direction to bring more of a state response to systemic racism that may exist.
Time.
Thank you. Rebecca?
Yeah, thank you. I agree. This is a question we should be listening on, and that's something I've been doing during my campaign. Not only attending a Black Lives Matter protest here in Portsmouth, but I've also, met with the president of our local NAACP. I've talked to, county attorneys. I've talked to prosecutors. I've learned of initiatives such as LEAD, which is a program which would give arresting officers discretion to direct people to services rather than incarceration. I think that solutions here in New Hampshire, need to be uniquely fitted to here. In some ways, we are lucky because we may have problems on a smaller scale than other places, but really any disproportionate treatment is completely unacceptable. And so making sure that we're in touch with all of the communities and stakeholders that are affected by this, and that we're listening to them on issues like bail reform, like having another place, to sort of to be finding that may not rise to the surface immediately. I think is incredibly important, and not only listening to those ideas, but making sure that then we take those forward in the legislature and we fight for them, because without champions, these issues are not going to move forward. And to have some diversity in our representation is important, which, I would be proud to be at least a small part of that representation as the first ever LGBTQ woman that would be elected to our state Senate.
Excellent, thank you. Okay, this next question, I'm just going to read it verbatim. I've heard a rumor that one of you was recently registered as a Republican. You both are running as Democrats. How important is it to you that we have Democratic control of the state Senate and governor's office? And who are your progressive heroes and role models? Rebecca?
Yeah, thank you for the question. And I've heard that rumor too. So I think that this is a question probably directed to me, and I'm happy to answer it. My wife and I, we don't have the luxury of voting comfortably. We depend on the values of the Democratic Party to defend our family. And so in 2016, we identified President Trump as the threat that he is. And we were happy with either Hillary or Bernie, as our Democratic nominee for president. And so, I did vote in the Republican primary, standing up to Donald Trump from the very beginning. So, I think that it's important that we, as Democrats, that we take these kinds of actions and that we stand up for them. But I have a lifelong history of fighting for democratic values. And it is incredibly important to me that we have a Democrat in the corner office and that we have Democratic control of the Senate. That is the only way that we can continue to make a more inclusive and just New Hampshire. I look back on my 20-year track record on these issues, from, working for Amnesty International and volunteering for the John Kerry campaign in college, serving in the Peace Corps in West Africa, serving as a poll watcher for the Obama campaign in 2008, serving as an affordable and workforce housing advocate for over a dozen years, which is obviously a Democratic priority. Now spending each of my days, devoted to renewable energy. And lastly, living those values every single day, with my wife and our baby girl. So, it is a first priority for me. In terms of progressive heroes, I've always admired Elizabeth Warren's dedication to details and plans. I think it's wonderful the amount that she pays attention to the particular details and has a vision to move us forward.
Thank you. Deaglan?
Thank you. I've always thought the best way to beat Republicans is voting for Democrats, and I love doing that. When it comes to heroes, Elizabeth Warren, that's one way to agree on. I supported her campaign. She got me with her plans, and she got me with her ability to tie progressive values to actual needs and business, and that wonkiness I thought was really valuable. My dad was a hero of mine. It still is, in terms of always teaching me to fight for the person that needed the fight, needed the fighter in their corner, regardless of whether or not it was the popular thing to do or the right thing to do. Arnie Arneson is another, great, trailblazer. Dudley. I look up to Marjorie Smith. I don't know if she got off, but it's it's really amazing to have grown up in New Hampshire, and we have such a great history of politics, but we haven't always been, on the Democratic side.
15 seconds.
We're more porcal than than we were when I was a kid, and I just love, all the Democrats that fought and voted when it was a little harder than it is today, and have been carrying the torch for a very long time. And I hope to be able to continue to carry that torch.
Thank you. All right, I want to thank you both for being here this evening. I'm very, very impressed with what each of you have had to say. Thank you for participating in this forum. What we're going to do now is give each candidate 2 minutes to make their case for why they are the best candidate for the position of state senator. And we started with Deaglan when he opened, so we're going to start with Rebecca on this one.
Sure. So thank you guys all so much for being here tonight. And again, it's been great to answer all of your questions and to spend time with you. And I hope to spend much further time getting to know you and speaking with all of you. You know, I'm proud to be the candidate in this race that's endorsed by Senator Martha Fuller Clark to carry on her legacy in the state Senate. Martha and I have had a relationship that has gone back to my first run for city council. And, you know, her and I share an interest in land use, in housing, in energy, in women's rights, you know, coming down to when I visited the State House last fall to attend her commission on density. You know, I was still a nursing mother at that point, and there was nowhere for me to breastfeed my baby girl. And so even things like her fighting for lactation pod in the State House are the kinds of changes that, you know, I think I can carry on her legacy with. You know, I'm in this race because I think of people that need our help. You know, I think of my mom who had to work for a few extra years before she could retire to make sure she had health care. I think of my friend who, you know, 15 weeks into her pregnancy, unfortunately experienced a miscarriage and then received a bill for over $10,000 because that procedure was coded as an abortion that wasn't covered. You know, I think of a voter that I talked to recently on the phone who is 10 years sober and every day fights to make sure that she and others are thriving members of our society, because I think that makes it all better. And I think of, you know, even Great Bay Community College, who is currently investing in our workforce to make sure that we're coming out of this pandemic even stronger. You know, I am committed to these values. I'm committed to delivering change for the people that need us. And I think that I have a track record of accomplishing that change, not just talking about it, but 20 long years of working on at the state, local, and federal level to make sure that we're actually implementing and creating impact. You know, it's no small thing to take on this commitment, and it's something that my wife and I, you know, discussed extensively prior to my filing, and it's something that we're prepared to make the sacrifices that we need to give it the time that it deserves. It would be fun for a kid from the Dairy Queen, you know, to be able to bring her voice to Concord, but it's an absolute honor and one I take very seriously, and I would be honored to serve the District 21.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, Deaglan.
I'll be brief. First, I just want to thank everyone for being the best part of this democracy, and that's the voters, and for the Progressive Caucus for fighting the fight to bring you know, a party a little bit more left, and in my mind a little bit better off. So thank you for all the work that you've done, and Wendy, thank you in particular for hosting this. I'm in this race to fight for a government that provides equal opportunity to each citizen. All my life, I've seen diversity, education, the environment, healthcare as necessary for a prosperous state. You can trust that I'm going to fight for democratic values and always be a strong Democratic vote, because I have been my entire life. We need someone in this district, the most liberal district that we have, that is going to make progressive values look like New Hampshire values. I believe I can do that. And I can make that promise that I'm going to invest in our future to you tonight, because I've already made that to my daughters, our nearly 4-year-old and our one that's hopefully going to stay in just a little bit after the election in November. I'm proud of the support this campaign has earned from organizations like the firefighters, NEA New Hampshire, the state employees. I'm really proud of all of the former and current legislatures that have endorsed our campaign, including the majority of current state representatives in the district that want me to serve alongside them. But I am most proud to carry on this tradition and legacy of democratic principles that I grew up with, because I only know one thing, is that we move forward, not as one person, not as two people, but together. It doesn't matter how fast we get there. It matters that we get there together.
15 seconds.
I am proud of what brought me here, and I am proud to ask for your vote in the Democratic primary on September the 8th, which is a Tuesday. Thank you, guys.
Thank you. I want to, once again, I want to thank you both for being here tonight and for making my job so easy. Now I'd like to hand over the program to Chris Schultz, who is the chair of the Progressive Caucus, for some final words.
Hi, I don't, hopefully I get unmuted video wise, but hi, I'm State Representative Chris Schultz from Concord. I'm the chair of the New Hampshire House Progressive Caucus. Oh, here it's asking me. Okay, there we go. Sorry about that. At the beginning to explain a little bit of who we are, but the important part is that we are certain that our from your district is going to be one of you two. And we look forward to working with you. We look forward to growing progressive power in New Hampshire. Our ideas are not just more popular, but they affect the regular, everyday Granite Stater in a way that I know you understand. And we very much look forward to serving with you. I also want to take a moment to thank you for participating. I also want to recognize the great loss to many of us who were close to him of Paul MacEachern, Deaglan's dad. We were blessed to know him and love him. And so our prayers and our thoughts of compassion are with you and your family in this tough time. He was beloved by many. And we appreciate you continuing on with this tonight. We really appreciate that. I also want to take a moment to thank the organizers of all of these debates, which are State Representative Sue Vale and State Representative Sophia Wazir, and to thank our timekeeper, State Representative Catherine Rogers, and our moderator for tonight, State Representative Wendy Thomas. We have a great, formidable crew, and we look forward to working with the winner of this primary, who's going to be the next state senator. So thank you all very much, and I'm sure we'll be circling back soon.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you guys so much. Yeah, really nice to see you.
Thank you.